My name is Samuel Westwood, and what I'm about to tell you has completely destroyed me. I was a royal guard at Windsor Castle. I was 42 years old, an Afghanistan veteran, and I'd seen every kind of horrific thing in my life. But what I saw that night, everything I'd experienced before, paled in comparison to what happened beneath your castle that night. And now, I'm gone. I've disappeared. But my story remains. It was a cold night in February 2025. I was expecting a routine shift. The castle was officially empty. The royal family was in London, or so we thought. On my first patrol, I saw lights on beneath the East Wing. I called the control center. "It's not your job, Westwood. Patrol the perimeter," they said. But I'm curious, and that night, that curiosity ruined me. 3 black minivans arrived at the castle. No license plates, heavily tinted windows, no trace of them in the recording system. When I tried to question one of the drivers, 2 men with no official ID pushed me away. The next morning, I was called to a secret meeting, and right then, I realized this was much bigger than I had thought. There was an unforgettable cold silence in that meeting room. I had never seen the 3 people sitting across the table before. They weren't in official uniforms, but their authority was evident in their demeanor. The middle-aged one spoke. "Westwood, you will not discuss what you saw last night with anyone." "I don't understand what part you're referring to, sir," I said. My military background had taught me to stay calm in situations like this. The black vehicles, the activity at the side entrance, the lights on the East Wing, all of this is part of a confidential operation related to international security. We are granting you 3 days of mandatory leave. We recommend you spend this time with your family. They placed an envelope on the table. Just by looking at the thickness of the envelope, I could guess the amount of money inside. All they wanted in return for this money was my silence. "When will this operation end?" I asked. "There's no need to question this, just forget what you've seen." But I was a man who had seen a lot in Afghanistan. I had years of training in detecting when people were lying. These men were definitely lying, and what they were hiding was no ordinary security operation, homecoming and unease. When I got home, my wife Margaret was in the kitchen making breakfast. In our 23 years of marriage, she had never seen me so tense. "Samuel, what's wrong?" "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said as she set the plates on the table. "Well, there's a bit of a problem, darling. They gave me 3 days off. We can spend time together," I said. I knew I couldn't tell her what had happened, at least not yet. I tried to stay home that day, but my mind was constantly in Windsor. Even while watching TV, my thoughts lingered on those black cars, the lights on the East Wing, and the mysterious men who had pushed me away. I checked the newspapers in the afternoon. There was no news about Windsor. There was no mention of black cars or any security operation. It was as if nothing had happened. At dinner, Margaret tried to talk to me, but I couldn't fully focus on her. The same questions kept running through my head. What were those lights? Who were those men? And why were they acting so secretively? The midnight decision. I couldn't sleep that night. At 2:30 a.m., I got out of bed and went to the living room. Margaret was fast asleep. Looking out the window, I saw a dark-colored vehicle waiting under the streetlights. 2 people were sitting inside. They were watching me. At that moment, everything became clear. This wasn't just a security operation. It was an elaborate operation to conceal something. And I had become someone with dangerous information because I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But I wanted to know the real truth. The most important thing I learned in Afghanistan was that hidden truths are often much more terrifying. And there was only one way to learn this truth: to return to Windsor. I would put my plan into action the following night. My old badge, still, worked at the side entrances. Since the security shift change was at 3 a.m., I could get in at 2:30 a.m. and get out at 3:45 a.m. That gave me 1 hour and 15 minutes. I told Margaret that I had received an urgent call for work, and that I had to go in for the night shift. I hated lying, but I had no other choice. I arrived at Windsor at 2:15 a.m. I parked my car on a street away from the main entrance. As I walked toward the side entrance, my heart was pounding as if it would jump out of my chest. When I scanned my badge, the system recognized me, and the door opened. Everything inside looked normal. The corridors were silent. Only the emergency lights were on. But the atmosphere was different. It was as if there was an invisible tension inside the castle. I started walking towards the east wing. I went underground, using the service stairs. These tunnels had been used as shelters during World War II. They were officially sealed, but I knew the doors were open. When I entered the first corridor, a strange smell hit my nose. It was like incense, but much heavier and sharper. There were dark iron candlesticks on the walls, and thick candles were burning in some of them. Who had lit these candles? As I went deeper, I began to hear sounds. At first it just sounded like a murmur, but as I got closer, I realized they were words repeated rhythmically. It sounded like Latin, but it wasn't Latin. It was a much older, much more primitive language. As I turned a corner, I saw a light in the distance. The flickering flames of the candles illuminated a large room at the end of the corridor. The sounds were coming from that room. I hid behind a stone archway and peered inside carefully. What I saw was the most shocking moment of my life. In the center of the room was a perfect circle drawn in black dust. Inside the circle lay a man who appeared to be unconscious. Symbols carved with a knife were on his chest. Fresh wounds, still oozing blood. Around the circle stood about 10 people, dressed in black robes. Their hoods were pulled over their heads, their faces hidden. But I recognized 3 of them by their builds. Members of the royal family, most shockingly, a prince and a duchess were clearly distinguishable. I only recognized the third person from old photographs, very old photographs. The sounds grew louder. The hooded figures slowly circled around the circle. They held a stone chalice and passed it among themselves. Every time they drank from the cup, they made a strange guttural sound. On the walls were symbols that did not belong to any Christian tradition. Ancient pagan signs, stars, complex geometric shapes. These were part of a much older, much darker tradition. The man in the center stirred occasionally, but he was not conscious. This was not a human sacrifice, at least not yet. But they were, definitely doing terrible things to him. At that moment, a cold voice came from behind me. "You shouldn't have come here." When I turned around, 2 hooded figures stood before me. I couldn't see their faces, but I could tell from their voices that they were at least my age. "I was just patrolling," I said. I could feel my voice trembling. "No, Samuel Westwood, you're doing much more than that. You're seeing things you shouldn't see." They knew my name. This was planned. The 2 figures approached me. At that moment, my survival instinct kicked in. Using the fighting techniques I'd learned in Afghanistan, I attacked them. I kicked the first one in the knee and punched the second one in the chest. I started running down the corridor. There were sounds behind me, screams, shouts, footsteps. They were following me. As I climbed the stairs, I turned around. At least 5 people were behind me, making strange noises as they ran. They weren't human voices. When I reached the main floor, I ran for the main exit. I used the badge reader and the door opened. As soon as I got outside, I ran to my car. On the way home, I kept looking in the rearview mirror. It seemed like no one was following me, but I didn't feel safe. Margaret was asleep. Before going into the bedroom, I checked all the doors and windows in the house. Everything was in place, but I knew I wasn't safe anywhere anymore. The next morning, when I woke up, my head was throbbing. I had barely slept at all during the night. While Margaret was preparing breakfast in the kitchen, I checked the street from the window. The same dark-colored car was still there. It was in a different position, but it was definitely the same car. "Samuel, you're tense again," Margaret said from behind me. "What's going on?" "Just work stress, darling. It'll pass," I said, but I knew things were only going to get worse. The phone rang during breakfast. Margaret answered it. "It's for Samuel," she said, handing it to me. I don't recognize the voice. When I took the phone, the voice on the other end was cold and familiar. "Mr. Westwood, we need to talk about your walk last night." "Who is this?" "That's not important. What's important is your safety and your family's. Be near the pond in Regent's Park at 2 p.m. today. Come alone." The phone hung up. Margaret looked at me curiously. "Who was that?" "Work. It's an emergency," I said. I was lying again, but I had no choice. I arrived at Regent's Park at 1:45 p.m. I saw a middle-aged man sitting by the pond. He was wearing a suit, pretending to read his newspaper, but I knew it was him. When I sat down next to him, he started talking. "Mr. Westwood, you made a very dangerous mistake last night." "I was just doing my job." "No, you did much more than that. You saw things you shouldn't have seen. And now, that's a problem for us." The man closed his newspaper and turned to me. His face was ordinary, but his eyes were ice cold. "I'm offering you a choice. Forget everything you saw. Never mention it anywhere, in any way. In return, the safety of you and your family will be guaranteed." "What if I refuse?" "If you refuse, we cannot guarantee the safety of either you or your family. We know Margaret goes grocery shopping every morning at 8:30. We also know your daughter, Sarah, attends Manchester University." My heart stopped. They were threatening my family. Is this a threat? This is a fact. Don't underestimate our power, Mr. Westwood. What you saw in Windsor is just the tip of the iceberg. The man stood up. "I'm giving you 24 hours. Make your decision. Forget and live, or remember and face the consequences." When I got home, Margaret was tending to the flowers in the garden. It was a normal afternoon scene, but I knew nothing was normal anymore. I went up to my study and locked the door. I started thinking about how to get out of this situation. I could go to the police, but what would I say? The royal family is performing secret rituals. No one would believe me. Maybe it was best to forget. Maybe I should act as if I had never seen anything. But then the phone rang. This time, it was directly to the line in my study. "How do you know this number?" I said as soon as I answered. "Mr. Westwood, we have a different offer for you." The voice was different, older. "Work with us." "What do you mean?" "We don't want you to forget what you saw. On the contrary, we want you to see more. But for us." This was an offer I hadn't expected. For us who? You don't need to know that yet. But know this. What you saw in Windsor is only the beginning. And if you're on the right side, your family will truly be safe. I don't collaborate with anyone. Mr. Westwood, we're giving you a choice. Either you work with us, or you face them. There is no third option. The phone hung up, and I just sat there. There were two different groups, and they both wanted me, but I didn't know what they wanted. At 2:30 that night, the doorbell rang. Margaret was asleep. I went downstairs and looked at the door. Outside, I saw two people, hooded figures. I didn't open the door, but I spoke through the glass panel. "What do you want?" "Samuel Westwood, you have to come with us. I'm not going anywhere." At that moment, a third figure emerged from behind them. This figure was different, taller, more threatening, and he just stood there without speaking. "This is your final warning," said the first figure. "Either you come willingly, or we'll take you by force." Margaret came down the stairs. "Samuel, what's going on?" "Go upstairs, Margaret. Go upstairs now." But then the glass shattered. The third figure had reached inside and unlocked the door. He wore gloves, but they weren't gloves. It was as if his hands were completely covered in black leather. "Run, Margaret," I shouted. We went out the back door. As we ran through the garden, we heard noises behind us. But these noises weren't normal human voices. They were murmurs, growls, strange hissing sounds. We jumped into the neighbor's garden. Mr. Thompson was an old man who lived alone. I knocked on his door. "Mr. Thompson, it's an emergency. Let us in." When he opened the door and saw my frightened face, he immediately, "Let us in. What's going on, Samuel?" "Call the police. There are burglars in our house." But when the police arrived, there were no burglars. Our house was in disarray, but nothing had been stolen. Only the closet in my study had been opened. My personal files inside had been rummaged through. The police filed a report, but didn't seem very interested. They were probably amateur burglars who left when they couldn't find anything valuable, they said. After the police left, I searched my house more carefully. The files in my study had been rummaged through, but they hadn't found what they were looking for, because I kept the most important things in a much safer place. In the garage, there was a hidden compartment behind some old car tools. Inside were my old military documents, some private photos, and a few documents related to Windsor. Among these documents I found something very interesting. Windsor's underground plans. Not the official plans, but unofficial drawings given to me by a technician friend. These plans showed sections not visible in the official renderings. Beneath the east wing, there was not just the room I had seen, but a larger complex. Several rooms, corridors, and most interestingly, a deep section marked Old Treasury Room. While examining these plans, I noticed something else. The room where I had witnessed the ritual that night was actually just the entrance to this complex. The real mystery lay deeper in the Old Treasury Room. The next morning I decided to tell Margaret the truth. I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. "Margaret, what I'm about to tell you will sound crazy, but you have to listen." We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, and I told her everything. The night shift at Windsor, the ritual I witnessed, the members of the royal family, the threats, everything. Margaret was shocked at first, then scared, then angry. "Are you crazy, Samuel? Why are you getting me involved in this?" "Because you're already involved. They threatened us, Margaret. They threatened Sarah, too." Just then, the phone rang. Margaret answered it, and I could tell from the change in her voice that it was bad news. "Samuel, Sarah's teacher is calling. She hasn't come to school." My heart stopped. My daughter was missing. I called Manchester University. Sarah hadn't returned to her dorm last night. Her friends didn't know where she was either. University security had called the police, but there was no trace of her yet. Just then the phone rang again. The familiar cold voice. "If you want your daughter safe, come to Windsor tonight, 11 p.m., main entrance, alone." What have you done to Sarah? Nothing yet, but your time is running out. I want to see her. You will see her tonight. Are you coming? I'm coming. The phone hung up. Margaret was crying. Let's call the police, Samuel. No, these people are beyond the reach of the police. My only option is to go. That evening, as I prepared to go to Windsor, I took a few things from the safe places in our house. My old army knife, a flashlight, and most importantly, a small voice recorder. If I didn't come back tonight, at least part of the truth would be recorded. I left the house at 10:30 p.m. I hugged Margaret one last time. I'll be back, I said. Both Sarah and I will be back. What if you don't? Then go to the police and show them these plans. They're in the secret compartment in the garage. And remember this, the truth lies beneath Windsor. As I drove toward Windsor, I turned around one last time. The lights of our house were on. Margaret was watching me from the window. This could be the last time I saw them. As I approached Windsor, I saw the lights illuminating the castle, but this time it was different. The castle seemed darker, more threatening. When I reached the main entrance, I saw figures waiting for me. 3 were familiar, 1 was new, and the new one was Sarah. Sarah was there, but she wasn't herself. Her eyes were glassy, as if she were under hypnosis. The hooded figure standing beside her was holding her arm. "Sarah," I shouted as I ran. "Don't come any closer, Mr. Westwood," said the familiar, cold voice. "Your daughter is safe. For now." "What did you do to her?" "We just calmed her down a bit. She was very resistant, just like her father." Sarah looked at me, but she didn't seem to recognize me. There was no expression in her eyes. "What do you want?" "Come with us. We have things to show you, and we have an offer to make." I had no choice. For Sarah's safety, I had to go with them. "Fine, I'm coming, but don't touch Sarah. She'll stay with us. You can take her when you return, if you can come back, that is." This time they took me a different way. Not down the main staircase, but directly down a secret elevator under the east wing. I didn't know this elevator existed. How long has this elevator been here? Since the 1930s, but it's not shown on the official plans. The elevator stopped very deep down. When the doors opened, I was met with a view I hadn't expected. Modern lighting, clean corridors, and smooth floors. This underground complex wasn't just old tunnels. It was a modern, actively used, underground city. Welcome, Samuel, to the real Windsor. What I saw as we walked through the corridors was incredible. Offices, meeting rooms, libraries, old portraits hung on the walls, but these weren't portraits from official galleries. They were much older, much darker faces. What is this place? It's been in operation for over 1,000 years. The royal family is just the symbolic part on the top floor. The real power is here, deep down. I was brought into a large meeting room. There were people sitting around the table. Some wore robes, some wore normal clothes, but they all had the same cold look in their eyes. "Sit down, Samuel," said one of them. She was an old woman with an aristocratic accent. "Do you know who we are?" "No. We are the people who truly rule this country. The royal family, Parliament, the government. These are just shows to distract the people. The real decisions are made here." A map was opened in the middle of the table. It was a map of England, but instead of normal city names, it had symbols and cryptic signs. There are centers like ours beneath every major city. London, Edinburgh, Manchester, Liverpool, they're all connected underground. For what purpose? Control. Symbolic power is needed to control people, and to obtain that power, special rituals are required. At that moment, everything began to fall into place. The ritual I had seen wasn't just a single event. It was part of a system. Are you sacrificing humans? Sacrifice is a very heavy word, Samuel. We transfer energy. Some people are compelled to give energy so others can live. The old woman continued. The system works like this. At certain times, during specific astrological alignments, we perform rituals. During these rituals, life energy is taken from selected individuals and transferred to social leaders. How is that possible? It's ancient knowledge, knowledge from ancient Egypt, Babylon, Celtic culture. Modern science doesn't understand it yet, but we've been practicing it for 1,000 years. The others at the table listened silently. One of them seemed familiar. He was the editor of a British newspaper. Does the media work with you too? The media is one of our most important tools. We decide which news stories get published and which events are forgotten. What about me? What do you want from me? You know Windsor's security system. We need help from someone on the inside. In return, we give you power. What kind of power? Long life, resistance to disease, freedom from material hardship, and most importantly, access to real knowledge. But first, let us show you our real operations center. When we left the meeting room, we got into an elevator that went even deeper. This time we descended to incredible depths. I couldn't guess where we were. This is the deepest part of Windsor, the place we call the Old Treasure Room. When we got out of the elevator, the scene before me was the most shocking image of my life. A huge cave. Hundreds of symbols on the stone walls, and in the middle was a massive stone platform. Complex geometric shapes were drawn on the platform, but the most frightening thing was the figures waiting around the platform. They weren't human, at least, not entirely human. Who are they? Guardians. They've been here since ancient times. They ensure the rituals are performed correctly. The figures weren't moving, but I could see them breathing. They were tall, with abnormal body proportions, and a red glow in their eyes. What are they? Some questions shouldn't be asked, Samuel. What matters is that you know they work with us. Preparations were underway around the platform. Black candles were being placed. Strange tools were being arranged. Symbolic objects were being positioned. Tonight is a special night, said the man accompanying me. There's a lunar eclipse. These kinds of astronomical events increase the power of the ritual. What kind of ritual? A renewal ritual. We're rejuvenating the life energy of some important people. Several people were tied up in one corner of the platform. They looked unconscious but were breathing. Who are they? The chosen ones. They will make sacrifices for society. A tremendous rage rose within me. These were innocent people, and these murderers were going to kill them. This is murder. This is survival, Samuel. The strong survive. The weak contribute. At that moment, one of the guardians on the platform raised his head and looked at me. His eyes were truly red, and there was nothing human in them. Samuel, we are offering you one last chance. Work with us. In return, your daughter will be safe, you will be powerful, and you will learn the truth. What if I refuse? Then both you and your daughter will be part of tonight's ritual. I had no other choice. At least, it seemed that way. I accept. Very good. Then let's take you to the ceremony master. I was led into a small room behind the platform. There was a table inside, and strange objects on it. But the strangest thing was the person sitting behind the table. This person was so old that it was impossible to guess their age. Their skin didn't have age spots, but completely different patterns. And when they spoke, there was a metallic ring to their voice. "Samuel Westwood," he said without looking at me. "We've been expecting you." "How were you expecting me?" "Because you are also one of the chosen ones. What you experienced in Afghanistan was no coincidence. It was planned to bring you here." This was information I hadn't expected at all. "What do you mean?" "Do you remember those strange events you encountered during your military service? Those dreams, those voices, those visions?" I remembered. In Afghanistan, I had sometimes had strange dreams at night. Ancient temples, strange ritual ceremonies, and always the same voices. I had thought it was post-traumatic stress disorder. They came from us. We were preparing you. At that moment, I felt something vibrating in my pocket, the recording device I had secretly brought. It was recording the entire conversation, but the ceremony master smiled as if he could read my mind. "You know your recording device won't work, don't you, Samuel?" How did he know? This place is different. There are energy fields. Electronic devices don't work properly. I checked the device. It really wasn't working. But don't worry. Soon you will experience all the truths directly. At that moment, drumbeats began to sound from outside. It was time for the ritual. Let's go watch, Samuel. It's the most important moment you'll ever witness in history. When we left the room, people were gathering on the main platform. Robed figures were forming a circle. The guardians had taken their designated positions, and right then, they brought Sarah to the center of the platform. When they brought Sarah to the center of the platform, my heart stopped. My daughter still had that glassy stare, but now she looked scared. It was as if the effects of the drugs were wearing off. "Dad?" she whispered when she saw me. "Sarah." "I'm here, my girl." I tried to run to her, but two guards instantly blocked my way. One of them put his hand on my shoulder, and that touch wasn't a normal touch. It was as if my hand was ice cold and burning at the same time. "Not yet, Samuel," said the ceremony master. "You cannot interfere with anything until the ritual is complete. What will you do to my daughter? She will merely be a conduit for the energy transfer. If all goes well, she will only be slightly weakened. And if it goes wrong?" The ceremony master smiled, but it was not the kind of smile a human could make. "Then your daughter will remain with us forever." Hooded figures formed a circle around the platform. They had now lowered their hoods, and I could see their faces. Among them were members of the royal family I recognized, but their faces weren't normal. Their skin was very pale, their eyes were very bright, and their movements were very slow. It was as if they were alive, but also dead. "Are these people real?" I asked the man next to me. "They are more than that now, Samuel. People who have absorbed ritual energy for years. They have learned to exist beyond death." The drums began to beat. These drum beats were not normal drum beats. It was a rhythm much deeper, much more primitive than the beating of a heart. The ceremony master raised his hands and began to utter strange words. These words did not resemble any language I knew. "Num vocatus est, tenebrae surgunt, sanguis et energia." With each word he spoke, the symbols on the platform began to glow. They were truly glowing. This was not an optical illusion. Sarah was lying in the center of the platform. The symbols around her grew brighter and brighter. I noticed then that thin lines of light were emanating from Sarah's body. What is this? Life energy. It's being taken from her and transferred to the others. Sarah began to writhe in pain. She was crying and calling for me. Dad! Dad, help me! I couldn't take it anymore. No matter what the guardians did, I had to help my daughter. I pulled out the military knife from my pocket and attacked the nearest guardian. When the knife pierced his body, it wasn't what I expected. No blood came out. Only a dark liquid seeped out, and a terrible smell spread. The guardian turned to me, and I saw its face. It wasn't a human face. It was more like the face of something very old. Hollow eyes, rotten teeth, and worst of all, a constant, unrelenting growl. The other guardians began attacking me too. I tried to fight them off using the combat techniques I learned in Afghanistan, but these weren't normal enemies. After I hit them, they didn't fall to the ground. They just slowed down. And the sounds they made. Those sounds rang in my ears, pounding in my head. One of them grabbed me and threw me. My back hurt badly when I hit the stone wall, but when I heard Sarah screaming, I got back up. Let her go, I yelled. At that moment, the ceremony master spoke loudly. Samuel Westwood, it's time to stop. When he raised his hand, something strange happened. My feet left the ground. I was suspended in the air. It was physically impossible, but I was experiencing it. Where do you get these powers? Thousands of years of knowledge, Samuel. Humanity forgot these powers, but we did not. They took me to the edge of the platform. I was very close to Sarah, but I couldn't move. Samuel, it's time to tell you the truth. This ritual is not for your daughter. What do you mean? This ritual is for you. We wanted you from the beginning. Sarah was just a tool, used to bring you here. This was something I never expected. Why do you want me? Because you are special, Samuel. Those visions you saw in Afghanistan were no coincidence. You are a person who is naturally sensitive to ritual energy. The symbols on the platform were now very bright. The lines of energy emanating from Sarah were now directed towards me. As we transfer this energy to you, you will become part of the system. You will live long, you will be powerful, but you will also be under our control. Never. You have no choice, Samuel. The ritual has already begun. Just then, gunshots rang out from the other side of the platform. Someone was coming and shooting at the guards. Who is that? I was shocked when I saw the figure emerging from the darkness. It was Margaret. My wife had come here. Margaret, get out of here. But she wasn't listening to me. She had a shotgun in her hand and was systematically shooting at the guards. The guards were slowing down from the bullets. Samuel, take Sarah. Thanks to this attack, distracting the ceremony master, I escaped his control. I immediately ran to Sarah. Sarah, wake up, my daughter. Sarah's eyes began to return to normal, but she was very weak. Dad, I'm so tired. It's okay, my daughter. I'll get you out of here. I grabbed Sarah and started running. Margaret was still firing and keeping the guards at bay. Margaret, to the elevator. But as we ran toward the elevator, the ceremony master shouted after us, You can't escape. The ritual isn't complete. Sarah will die. Sarah was indeed growing weaker by the second. Her body was very cold, and her pulse was very slow. What are we going to do, Samuel? Margaret asked. I don't know, but we have to get out of here. We got into the elevator, but when I pressed the button, it didn't work. The system is shut down, said Margaret. Are there stairs? I found the emergency stairs. They were very steep and very long, but we had no other choice. We started climbing the stairs, carrying Sarah, but we heard voices behind us. They were following us. I carried Sarah while Margaret fired at the guards behind us. We heard terrible sounds as we climbed the stairs, hissing, roaring, and that metallic ceremonial master voice. "Samuel, turn back. Your daughter is already dying." Sarah was really in bad shape. It was getting harder for her to breathe. "Dad, it's cold. Hang in there, girl. Just a little longer." When we reached the middle of the stairs, Margaret ran out of bullets. "Samuel, no more. Bullets!" The guards behind us were closing in. Their footsteps weren't normal footsteps. It was like they were ringing metal bells. "Hurry, Margaret. They're too close." Finally, we reached the main floor. I knew this place. It was the normal Windsor corridors. "To the car," I said. When we went outside, the air was very cold. Sarah was shivering. Margaret started the car. "Should we go to the hospital?" "No, they're in hospitals too. We're going home." I looked in the rearview mirror as I drove. No one was coming out of Windsor, but the lights illuminating the castle were brighter than ever. "Margaret, how did you find us?" I found the secret documents, and I trusted my instincts. A mother always finds her child. Sarah was still very weak in the back seat. "Dad, will they come back?" "I don't know, sweetheart, but you're safe now." But I knew we weren't really safe. This was only the beginning. When we got home, it was 4:30 in the morning. I put Sarah to bed. She was still very weak, but at least she was breathing normally. "Margaret, let's lock up the house. All the doors, all the windows. No one should come in." "Samuel, what is this?" "What was happening down there? I'll tell you everything. But first, let's check on Sarah." I sat next to my daughter and held her hand. Her hand was ice cold, and her pulse was very slow. But she could talk. "Dad, those people, they weren't normal." "I know, sweetheart, but you're safe now." "No, Dad, I'm not safe. They're inside my head." This was very disturbing. "What do you mean?" "I hear their voices. They're calling me. They're telling me I have to go back." At that moment, the doorbell rang. It was 5 a.m. That wasn't normal. I went to check the door. There was no one outside, but there was a box in front of the door. I brought the box inside. Inside was an old photograph, a photo of Sarah as a baby. But this photo had been taken in our house, and I had never seen it before. There was a note on the back of the photo. "We were always watching her." Margaret started shaking when she read the note. "Samuel, what do they want?" "They want me, and they're trying to get me back using Sarah." That day, strange things started happening in the house. The phone would ring by itself, but no one was talking. The TV channels would change on their own. And worst of all, Sarah was constantly mumbling. "Sarah, what are you mumbling?" "I don't know, Dad. There are voices in my head. They're calling me back." In the afternoon, Margaret turned on the news. When I saw the first story, I froze. Samuel Westwood, a security guard working at Windsor Castle, is wanted. He will answer questions related to terrorism. My photo was on the screen, but this photo had not been taken from any official source. Westwood is also believed to have kidnapped his daughter. If you see these people, notify the police. "How is this possible?" said Margaret. "We rescued Sarah." "The media is under their control. They're twisting the truth." Just then, the phone rang. Margaret answered it. "Margaret Westwood? This is Police Inspector Johnson. We need to talk about your husband." "Samuel isn't here." "Yes, we know. But you and your daughter may be in danger. We can provide you with protection." "No, thank you. Mrs. Westwood, this is a serious situation. Your husband may be a very dangerous man." Margaret hung up the phone. "Samuel, we can't even trust the police anymore." That evening, Sarah's condition worsened. She had a fever and was delirious. Num vocatus est. I have to go back. They're waiting for me. Sarah, look at me. But Sarah's eyes couldn't focus. She was talking as if she were somewhere else. Dad, they're calling me. If I don't go back, I'll die. No, sweetheart, it's their game. No, Dad, it's real. They have to give me back the energy they took from my body. Otherwise, my heart will stop. It was a terrifying possibility. Maybe Sarah really was dying. At 2 a.m., Sarah suddenly stood up. They're here, she said. Who's here, Sarah? They've come to take me. When I looked outside, I saw black cars at both ends of the street. People were getting out of the cars, but these weren't normal people. Their movements were very slow. Margaret, we're going out the back door, but when I looked into the backyard, there were figures there too. We're surrounded. Sarah was trembling, but also smiling. There's no escape now, Dad. I have to go with them. Never. At that moment, the front door opened by itself. A figure entered. It was familiar. The ceremony master, Samuel Westwood. This is our final warning. Get out of here. Sarah is dying. Can't you see? Only we can restore the energy balance in her body. Sarah really did look terrible. Her lips were turning blue. If you want to save her, come with us. Margaret was crying. Samuel, what should we do? Sarah was struggling to breathe. Dad, please, go with them. There's no other way. What will you want in return for healing Sarah? Just your cooperation. You will work for us. What kind of work? Convincing other security guards, expanding the system, and of course, finding new recruits when needed. So you'll put other families through the hell I've been through. The system is growing, Samuel. You either become part of it, or you get crushed. Sarah was about to faint. Okay, I said. I accept. The ceremony master touched Sarah. When he placed his hand on my daughter's forehead, Sarah's breathing returned to normal. Her color improved, too. You saw it. Only we can save her life. But how is that possible? The energy bond. Samuel, during the ritual, a permanent bond was formed between your daughter and us. Her life is now under our control. I hugged Margaret. I'm sorry, darling. There's no other way. No, Samuel. There is a way. We can fight them. How? You saw their power. The police are under their control. The media is under their control. How can we fight them alone? The ceremony master was growing impatient. Make up your mind, Samuel. Either you come now, or Sarah starts dying again. Sarah opened her eyes and looked at me. Dad, do you have to go? Yes, sweetheart, but I'll be protecting you. Can I come with you? No. You'll stay with your mom. You'll try to live a normal life. But the ceremony master intervened. No, Samuel, Sarah will come with us. We need to keep her close because of the energy bond. That wasn't part of the deal. The deal has changed. Margaret screamed, No, you can't take my daughter. But when the ceremony master's eyes flashed, Margaret froze. She couldn't move. Margaret, I shouted, but she couldn't hear me. She'll stay that way, said the ceremony master, frozen until you complete your tasks. This is cruelty. This is control, Samuel. If you obey, your family lives. If you don't. As I left the house with the ceremony master, I looked back at Margaret one last time. She stood there, frozen, unable to move. Sarah was holding my hand, but she wasn't quite herself anymore either. She was under their control. Dad, they changed me. She said slowly, I can't think like I used to. Try to hold on, daughter. I'll find a way. But I was actually hopeless. These people, or whatever they were very powerful. It was impossible to resist them by normal means. As we got into the car, the ceremony master spoke. "Samuel, I will now explain your true mission. You will not just be a security guard. You will recruit new candidates for the system." "What do you mean?" "You will find other families with children, suitable for energy transfer, and you will prepare them for us." A tremendous rage welled up inside me. They weren't just turning me into a collaborator. They were going to use me to drag other innocent families through the same hell. Never. "Samuel, remember Margaret's condition." As we drove toward Windsor, only one thing occupied my mind. How could I destroy this system from within? When we returned to Windsor, they gave me a private room. It was in the underground complex, near the other collaborators. It was like a hotel room, but it had no windows. They took Sarah to a separate section. For training, they said. I could only see her for 1 hour a day. "Dad, they're trying to change me," she said during our first meeting. "They're putting strange things in my head." "What kind of things?" "Dreams, but they feel real. There are other children there, and they're not normal anymore." "Hang in there, sweetheart. I'll find a way." But I didn't really know what to do. I was constantly under surveillance. My first assignment began the next day. The ceremony master summoned me to the large meeting room. "Samuel, I'll give you your first target." He placed a file on the table. Inside were photos and information about a family. The Johnson family. Father is a retired police officer. Mother is a teacher. 2 children. A 16-year-old girl and a 14-year-old boy. "What do you want me to do to them?" "We want you to bring them into the system. The children are suitable for energy transfer." "How?" "You'll offer the father a job, working as a security guard in Windsor. We'll handle the rest." The file contained the family's address, daily routines, and vulnerabilities. They had spent months observing them to compile this file. "What if I refuse?" "You know Margaret's situation." The next day, I went to the Johnson residence. It was an ordinary suburban house. The man who answered the door really did look like a former cop. Safe, but also suspicious. "Mr. Johnson, I'm Samuel Westwood, from Windsor Castle Security." "Yes?" "I have a job offer for you." He let me in and we talked. As a retired cop, he was interested in security work. Our offer was good too. High salary, housing, benefits. "I need to think about it," he said. "Of course, but it's a great opportunity. I recommend you don't pass it up." On my way home, I felt a great pang of guilt. I was dragging this man and his family into hell. That night, in my own room, I began to formulate my plan. The only way to destroy the system from within was to find their weakest point. The next day, I started researching the complex. As an excuse, I said, "I want to do my job better." The ceremony master seemed pleased. While examining the old records, I found something very interesting. The system's power came from a single source. That large stone platform in the old treasury room. The platform stored thousands of years of energy. If the platform was damaged, the entire system could collapse. But how could I destroy the platform? It was very sturdy and constantly guarded. While examining the old engineering plans, I noticed something. Water flowed under the platform, an ancient underground river. If I could direct this water onto the platform, the electrical energy system could short-circuit. Sarah's help. When I met with Sarah, I told her my plan. "Dad, it's too dangerous." "I know, sweetheart, but there's no other way." "But I can help." "How?" While they were training me, I was actually learning about them too. I can see how they use their systems. Sarah was speaking more maturely now. It was as if she had grown beyond her years. If you try to damage the platform, I can sabotage their systems from the inside. That's very dangerous, Sarah. Dad, if we don't do this, I'll be their slave forever, and you'll destroy other families too. She was right. We had to make an attempt. On the third day, Johnson called me and said he accepted the job. That family was about to fall into the system's net too. That evening, I reported to the ceremony master. Very good, Samuel. Johnson will start tomorrow. His family will move into the lodgings in Windsor next week. What happens next? That's our job. You just focus on new targets. He gave me the second file. This time, it was a father who was a teacher, and a mother who was a nurse. 3 children. That night I made up my mind. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to act tonight. At 2 a.m., I left my room. The corridors were quiet, but there were security cameras. Luckily, thanks to my old security background, I knew the blind spots. I went down to the old vault. The platform glowed silently. There were guards, but fewer at night. I found the water system. The old pipes still worked. If I found the main valve, I could direct the water onto the platform, but then I heard a voice behind me. "What are you doing, Samuel?" When I turned around, I saw Sarah. But her eyes were different, much brighter, much colder. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" "They sent me to stop you." My heart broke. They had completely taken over my daughter. "Sarah, I'm your father." "Not anymore. Now I'm their child." Sarah approached me. Her movements had changed. They were very slow, very controlled. "Dad, you can't fight the system. They're too powerful. Sarah, please. Somewhere inside, the real you is still there." "The real me is gone now, Dad. But don't worry. You'll be like me soon." At that moment, I realized I couldn't save my daughter anymore. But at least I could save other families. "Sarah, I'm sorry." I turned the valve. Water immediately began pouring onto the platform. Sarah screamed, but it wasn't a normal scream. It was a metallic, inhuman sound. The platform began to spark. The symbols around it were trembling. When the water touched the platform system, there was a tremendous explosion. But it wasn't a normal explosion. It was an energy explosion. The entire underground complex shook. The guardians were screaming and becoming unable to move. The ceremony master came running. "What have you done, Samuel?" "I crashed your system." But the ceremony master was laughing. "You only crashed the local system. The main system is much larger. There are similar centers in London, Edinburgh, all over the world. At least I stopped this one." "Yes, but in return, you lost everything." At that moment, Sarah began to return to normal. As the platform's energy was cut off, the control over her was diminishing. "Dad, is it really you?" "Yes, my daughter. You're back." The ceremony master was furious, but his power was waning. "This won't be the end for you, Westwood." But at that moment, the ceiling of the underground complex began to crack. The water system had damaged the platform, and the entire structure was failing. "Sarah, we have to get out of here." We ran through the corridors toward the elevator. The guards were coming after us, but their power was greatly diminished. We got on the elevator and went up to the main floor. When we left Windsor, the sky was brightening. Sarah's color had returned to normal. "Dad, how's Mom?" "Let's go see." When we got home, Margaret was still in the same position, but because the platform system had collapsed, the spell on her had weakened. Margaret, Margaret, wake up. She slowly opened her eyes. Samuel, is that you? What happened? It's a long story, darling, but we're safe now. 3 months later, we were living in a different city. New identities, new lives. Sarah was back to normal, but there were traces of what she had been through. Sometimes she had bad dreams at night. Margaret still didn't fully understand what had happened, but she didn't ask questions. I, on the other hand, continued to record what I had experienced, because the ceremony master was right. This was just one center. There was a larger system, and one day, somehow, I would have to stop that system, too. The Johnson family left Windsor a week later. They said it was family reasons. Maybe I had saved them. Sometimes Windsor Castle was in the news. They called it restoration work. But I knew the truth. They were trying to rebuild the system, and I was preparing myself because this story wasn't over yet.